And he's got an outline for me to follow too.
No.
Well, first of all, this is Miller Walks visiting my good friend, Mrs. Marion Finger, and we're going to delve into her memory about things that are Stratford, so that it can be incorporated in the history book that is going to come out next year. 350 pages on 350 years of Stratford history. We'd like to start talking about the bakery business. Now, you actually baked bread, is that correct?
This was our bake shop.
Yeah, right here in your home.
Well, it was a baker shop. It wasn't a house.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You were living somewhere else. And of course, your husband delivered bread for many years. Did you have competitors in this business?
Well, of course, there was a baker shop in the Stratford Center.
Uh-huh.
And there wasn't any house to house when we started. There was only Bradbury Donuts used to go around and deliver from Bridgeport. Mm-hmm. But I think Walt gave Bork and Stevens the idea of delivering in Stratford, because after he went and wanted to buy from them, they set up a retail business there.
I see. In other words, he wasn't with Bork and Stevens until later, right?
Well, not until after we gave up baking our own.
I see. Yeah.
After we gave up our own baker shop and started to his father didn't want to. He was getting older and he didn't want to bake anymore.
He was involved in it too.
Yeah. He was working for Walt, but he was the baker.
I see.
And then we hired Mr. Culbert, and I'm wondering if the Culberts at the church are part of the Culbert family from North Avenue, because old Mr. Culbert was our cake baker.
I see. And I see. Then when you closed down the actual baking, he continued with the delivery service.
Yes, we.
What products did you bake besides cake and?
We bought from the Mullins Bakery in Bridgeport, Mulligan's Bakery, down on Stratford Avenue. That was a small baker shop too. We bought our cake there.
I see.
Because Bork and Stevens didn't bake only bread and rolls and like that. But then they went into the cake baking business after Walt went to them to buy. They knew that he was buying from Mulligan, and Harold Stevens says, well, maybe we'll start the cake business too. They did. They added it.
But originally, you were actually baking cakes here as well.
Oh, we baked everything here. Cake and pie and rolls.
And rolls?
Yeah.
Donuts?
Yeah. The last year we were in baker business, I packed 1,000 dozen hot cross buns.
And that year was when?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, it was around 1954, I guess, something like that. I wouldn't be sure I had the right date, because I burned up all my diaries after he died. I didn't want to, I started to read them, and when I found out there were a lot of names in there that I didn't even know who they were anymore, and I said, I guess he brought everybody in off the street to have supper with us, because I didn't even remember who they were when I saw their names written down. So I said, it's time to throw them out when you don't know who they are.
I understand the Grange in Stratford is celebrating their 100th year.
It did 2 weeks ago. A week ago Sunday, we had it down at the Episcopal Church. I went.
Yeah. Could you tell us what went on during that event?
Well, I tell you what, Dorothy Phillips, I think she's going to put it in the Bard, but I don't know. She was there and took pictures. We had a very wonderful thing. It was not drawn out and tiresome. The town manager was there. George Gunther was there, and our Chase was there. And they did not give political speeches. They talked very fine and short. And we had the state master, of course, and his wife there, and the delegates from the National Grange. There was 2 of those there, and it was really very lovely. Dorothy Holt gave the benediction, and she also gave, she was a hostess there. See, she's a Grange member for 67 years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 65 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you?
Huh?
How many years have
would
you?
be?
I'm 50.
Range member for
I'm 60-year member.
60-year member.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more than 60-year member. I joined in 33.
You said it was an Episcopal church? Is that what you said?
Episcopal Church Recreation Hall.
Mm-hmm.
You see, they couldn't get in the Oddfellows Hall where we meet because of the stairs there.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that are like me, I couldn't have gone if they'd had it there.
Mm-hmm.
It was really very lovely. They had kept the program. It was kept down to a minimum that people would not get tired.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not have a lot of names in it, of antique names, that nobody would know.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
I thought it was very wonderfully done. And they also, I had a degree team there for 20 years, and my girls never let me down in the 20 years I had that team, never. And Dorothy McShane was very anxious to have something done about it, so she pushed them. And they did get our degree capes, and of course only she and Elizabeth Johnson were the only two members that were left of our degree team to be on it. Other ones had died, but they brought out the fact that we had the degree team, and they sang a song, and they made up their own song, and really did a very wonderful job. Yeah. They didn't have a drill because they didn't have time to rehearse a drill. See, when I had charge of it, Leon Baker in the beginning helped me with making up the drill. And then when he died, Walt and I did it together for 20 years. And we used to spell out Housatonic. They used to do the drill and spell the word Housatonic out. And but they brought it in so that people would know, and they got out the capes, and they wore the capes, and they looked lovely. They're blue and gold. The capes are, and the girls that did it. There were 6 of them that did it, and they didn't do the drill, but they did the singing and talking and so forth. Very nice.
Yeah. Good.
Those things can be very boresome if you don't.
Yeah, right. I know. You just string it out forever. Let's switch our thinking to cooks and Hickory Hill and square dancing.
What?
Let's switch our thinking to cooks and Hickory Hill and
square dance up there.
Yes.
Yeah, Cook's camp. Yeah, well, we used to go up there. Of course, Walt's always been he never was a round dance dancer, but he loved square dancing, and he loved music. So we did go up there in the beginning, and used to go up there and took some of our friends with us. And then afterwards, he started the square dance orchestra because Janet was young, and Gladys Hopton would play the piano for us, so we started it down the Methodist Church. And really, it was nice. But then we got so that we had more outsiders than we did church people. And so Walt says, well, Janet was growing out of it, really, and he said, well, there's no use to keep going there when they really aren't our people down there at all. They were all outsiders before we got through.
And he called the dancers, right?
Yes. And at the time, Gladys was playing the piano down there.
Yes,
then afterwards, we had an orchestra. Yeah.
He played the violin also when he did the fiddling.
Yeah.
And called.
She's got his violin.
And I did do some tapes, record some of his records. Because he also put some of them down on record.
That's interesting. Let's talk about the church. I know that I'm not sure that all of our five daughters.
I think I had them all, Miller, as far as I remember. I think,
in church
and
school.
What I remember about Martha was so sick when I had her. I never forget how worried you people were about her.
Right.
She was a very, very sick girl.
Yes.
I guess you never thought you'd ever raise her. She was so sick. And look today, she's a healthy girl.
And
apparently, what I could see at the anniversary when I went.
Yes,
you know, your girls were wonderful to me, Miller. I never had a chance to really tell you, but every one of those girls came with their families to speak to me. I thought it was very, very wonderful because I wouldn't have known if they hadn't.
Right.
And Anne Marie was the first one. She met me at the door.
Yeah.
It was really very wonderful. I was so glad I was able to have somebody take me to that because really it was a joy to see all those girls again. Yeah. And Martha's boy plays the piano.
Plays saxophone, plays the clarinet, plays the piano. He's mostly into the clarinet. He's both in a band at high school and also a stage orchestra, smaller orchestra.
And his father plays the piano too.
Yes,
he was playing there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the son has gone great into track. He's a sophomore, and I don't know if they've ever had a sophomore that could jump 6 foot high.
Is he a tall boy?
He's taller than his father, but not extremely tall. And he does the broad jump, and he does sprints and hurdles. And
you have a wonderful family.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you, this is off the record, but Bonnie, now she's the girl that her husband was so sick, isn't she?
Well, yeah, she lost
he
her
was
husband.
sick with this cancer in the
in
face
the jaw, yes.
For a long time.
Yes.
I couldn't remember whether it was Elaine or Bonnie.
No, it was Bonnie.
I knew it was one or the other, and I couldn't
and
just...
Anne Marie lost her husband from cancer
Yes,
of the
I
lung,
know,
you know.
that's right, and her
now
son...
we're going to a third session with Martha's husband.
Oh, Martha's husband?
He's taking chemotherapy right now for a big growth in his nasal, above his nose, nasal cavity.
Martha's?
But he seems to be reacting quite well. We've been through some downs on this whole thing, but right now things are looking a bit up. So we hope that it...
Well, Martha, Anne Marie went through an awful lot. She did. And then Elaine, she had such a bad situation too. He was jealous of her, don't you think?
Well, yeah, he was a little sort of a stick in the mud who would never get out with him.
Because she was such a smart girl. It looked to me like she was smarter than he, and he... you know, sometimes that causes jealousy, doesn't it? I mean...
we always thought he was marvelously patient with her going through her graduate work in nursing there. She had to travel long distances, and it took a long day for her to do that. It seemed to be tolerating. And once she graduated, though, somehow it turned otherwise.
I'm afraid she was so smart. I'm afraid that it got the best of him, and it shouldn't. A person ought to be proud of it.
Yeah, she's is in the Visiting Nurse Association.
Yes.
You know that. And
is it up in Shelton where she is?
No, it's in Bridgeport.
In Bridgeport.
And she's in charge of all the cancer. What do they call hospice? Hospice program.
Hospice.
Hospice program. Yes.
Oh yeah, in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a tremendous shortage of nurses today. Yeah.
I'm telling you, this girl next door, she goes full time. She's working out. And I think she's going to have another baby, and I wonder how she manages to go and work like that. You know, it's because it's hard work. Nursing is hard work.
Yeah, coming back.
I remember Marion. I had her down in the primary department. She was downstairs in the old building.
Oh, yeah.
Right down as you go from the sanctuary down those flight of stairs there.
Oh.
She was mine. Primary superintendent.
Yeah.
I think Dorothy Bond was one of my first Sunday school teachers.
And Dorothy was a great pianist.
Played the piano.
Very faithful.
In a little department right below.
Yeah.
Near the choir room. At least it was the choir room now. I'm all twisted around what you have now.
Yeah. What are your recollections of Melville Boomer?
Oh, I personally have good recollections of.
Yes.
He was a wonderful, charitable man. He did so much for the tramps. Even really, nobody will ever know what he did for those people. He really was. He was not like the people today, demonstrative. People didn't really know what he did because he didn't tell what he did, but he did an awful lot. Really, the world has changed.
I think the community of Stratford recognized him as a very fine sermon.
Oh yeah, the Catholic priests really, they came to his funeral, you know. Yeah.
I know.
I remember they sat down front in the church. Yeah.
The chaplain of the firehouse and the chaplain of my
state chaplain too.
State chaplain of the Senate.
He had great feelings for all poor people.
A very loving man.
Yes, he was.
Loved and loved.
Yeah,
I
great
felt very
feelings.
close to him too because I could talk to him, not having a father of my own, but he just was so fatherly, of course, and I would chum around with Mildred, you know, and it was so dear and so precious. I thought one thing I remember about him is that he was a man of prayer. He could even spend, I think, 15, 20 minutes sometimes in prayer. I've never known anyone since that could pray like the Reverend Bowman could pray sincerely. I don't think he had any notes down, or he certainly didn't write it out anyway. But he had a very...
Why don't you introduce yourself at this point? I haven't mentioned who you are and your relations.
I'm cousin, and I'm Rosabelle Wells Clark now. And I'm here visiting with Marion.
You come down quite regularly, help her out?
My husband has gone back to work, and so we've been living in Maine for 12 years, and so we come back down from Maine, semi-retired, full time.
Where?
The same place where he was before.
Up in Maine?
W.S. Rockwell over in Fairfield.
Oh,
That's where he's worked.
I see.
And he was asked to come back.
They called for him. They needed him.
Great.
So I'm glad to spend this time with Marion some of the days.
Yes. What are the changes that come to mind in Stratford?
Oh, so much I wouldn't know where to start.
Where to begin? Yeah.
Oh, I remember Main Street when it was a dirt road, and the grass grew between the trolley tracks.
Yeah.
All the old homes. I could almost myself name some of the homes as you go out in certain here. You know, we could start here and just name Dorothy Bond and the different ones. Very Fairchild.
I should have noted the number on
2979.
your home is at 2979, right? Main Street.
I was born on Longbrook Avenue, though.
She was
down the yellow house down there.
She told me today when we
And where the police station is used to be a sawmill. And where that brown house is next to the entrance to the police station was the blacksmith shop.
And then Mr. Peck.
Huh?
Did Mr. Peck live down there?
Mr. Elliot Peck, he lived down, where the Grandway is down there.
Yeah,
that was
across from the Grandway.
Yeah, across from there.
Which is now apartment buildings, right?
Yeah.
I remember going up into the garage when
he
Barbara,
had picnics up overhead the garage there a lot of times too.
And Barbara is an artist, and she has some paintings up there. And I got one of her pictures, which is what do I say? Modern in this respect. It's just a bunch of colors and so on. And I was rather amused that when I sort of picked this one out to give to Margaret for her birthday, that I looked on she had to look on the back to find out which side was right side up.
Barbara looks just like her grandmother Peck. She's an image of her grandmother Peck, and she's very, very much like her. Second Mrs. Elliot Peck was a very lovely woman. I didn't know the first one. She died. That was Dorothy's mother. Died when Dorothy was about 9, and then Mr. Peck married the Fairchild lady, and she was a lovely person, Louise Fairchild.
I will endorse that statement very
lovely
much because
person.
when we were sort of shopping around for a church, visited a number of them, and I was concerned that it not be such a small church that all it could do was survive, but would have an outreach beyond itself. And she had a way of spotting the stranger, and she came up and greeted me, and I think it was that.
Yeah, she was a sweet woman, very
tied
sweet.
me with the church. Yeah.
And Betty and Dorothy are so much alike. And you wouldn't think, they're two different mothers, but the same father.
Yeah.
But they were so much alike. Both of them. Dorothy was just as lovely as Betty. Betty's a lovely person.
Right. Can you tell me anything about different people that have been in the town hall?
Yeah. Mabel Wilcoxon was there for years.
Acting as what?
I think she was the treasurer, but I'm not sure. And then also on Church Street there, oh dear, what was her name? Maybe it'll come to me after. She worked there in the town hall for years too. I can tell you about Jim Lally, the old selectman, because old Stanley Beach tried to invent an airplane, and he had Jim Lally come to get on the airplane. The plane started to raise off the ground, and Jim Lally hopped off. He was scared that the thing was really going to go up. He was our select man. He thought sure the thing was going up, so he jumped off. Yeah.
He wasn't piloting it then. Somebody else was. Who was piloting?
Huh?
Somebody else was piloting.
Oh, well, Stanley Beach. He built it, and I suppose he did anyway. Yeah. That's what they said. He built the airplane, and he wanted Jim Lally to take a ride on it.
Oh.
But, of course, the Stanley Beach was from the rich beaches in Stratford, from Academy Hill. We were the poor beaches.
I see.
Yeah. From, what do you call it, Beaver Dam. My parents my grandparents owned Beaver Dam in the beginning, where the Beaver Dam Reservoir is. That was my grandfather's meadowland. And my mother was from Milford. We're related to the original settlers of Milford and Stratford. On my mother's side, Milford, father, and Stratford. Yeah.
Lou is right now going through quite a research program about the very original people to come to Stratford, and he's coming to the conclusion, or he's close to coming to it, that he suspects that
named after Stratford on Avon, but another Stratford in England, which is much closer to London because he's tracked down various first settlers where they came from, and there's a whole group right around this little town of Stratford in that area.
Oh.
But so it'll be interesting.
Well, my father said we were the seventh generation. He was the seventh generation from England. They wanted him something about something to do with the coat of arms. He said, "Well, I never was in England, and I don't know anybody in England, and I don't care anything about England, and I want it."
Yeah.
First, fourth governor of Connecticut is Thomas Wells. That was my great from before or after him came John Wells. In the history book it says how he actually came down here, and of course this was Stratford was all of Bridgeport and Fairfield at that one piece, and he bought it in the first history book. Of course, you've probably all read it and known it, but it was so much gunpowder and so many skins and everything else that he gave to the Indians and sold the whole thing. It was Wells, John Wells, who was one of the ones that did the swapping with the Indians.
Let's come back to Main Street about your neighbors up and down the street. Would you like to say something about them?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember, I was going to tell you about Reverend Eggleston. I'll never forget him. I was a kid. And he always carried chocolate peanuts in his pocket and for the kids when he met them.
Yeah.
And he used to walk. And we all were waiting for Reverend Eggleston to appear because we'd get a chocolate peanut.
And what church was he?
Methodist.
Methodist, yes. I thought I'd heard that.
Yeah, yeah. And, well, across the street where the beginning of the shopping area is,
Mm-hmm.
was Mr. Merrick's house, and he had a paper bag factory in the back there.
Mm-hmm.
He made paper bags, and he used to get a lot of samples of colored paper,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to give them to we kids to make paper doll dresses out of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
remember that.
Yeah.
Then there was a Lyman family that lived just down below there. Then, of course, you remember when the Cardinal was there, probably, the restaurant. That was the Carey house originally. The Carey family lived there. Then next to that was D.C. Wood's house, which took up, they tore that down when they made the Barnum Avenue go through there. And a very interesting story about D.C. Wood. He was married 4 times. And they used to have a story they told about him. Here I lie on my first wife's bed, with my second wife's pillow under my head. My third wife's coverlet covers my hide, where my fourth wife lies by my side. And that's just a little bit of humor.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
expect you to use it, but
Well,
I knew you could appreciate.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he owned the sawmill down here on where the police station is. He would own the sawmill, and we kids used. Of course, I lived that last house, the yellow house that was the last house before you got to the sawmill, and we used to be allowed to go over in that sawmill after they finished working days, and they had a long thing on wheels that they put logs on, and we could go over there after on that, we kids.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the Mr. Anderson that ran the blacksmith shop always made horseshoe nail rings for all we kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And across the street, of course, was all open lots, and Uncle Mallet owned the big white Babylon used to live in before it was torn down. And we used to slide downhill in the back there on the property. And roller skate. That was a hill there before. They cut that down. We used to roller skate down there, down the hill there. It was a good place to roller skate.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the Depression?
Well, I remember that we were in the baker business, and we kept going, but I can tell you this is not exactly in our favor, but we had a family that lived on Patterson Avenue that had 5 boys, and the husband had a job in Bridgeport, and he had a good job, but he was mad at something and gave up his job, and he couldn't get another job anywhere with the Depression, and he had 5 boys to feed. And one day Walter went there to deliver. He always delivered bread. She always bought quite a few loaves of bread because she had 5 boys. And she said, Mr. Finger, I want to tell you, you shouldn't leave any more bread because I can't pay you anymore. And she said, the milkman has stopped the milk. And she said, I think you'll have to stop the bread, Mrs. Schlegel, but as long as you need bread, you're going to have it, if whether you can pay me or not. And do you know that when the man got a job, he wouldn't pay any of his bills afterwards. He was dead set against everybody, and he wouldn't pay anybody. But she had a boy that was called in the service, and that boy sent her money every week, and she paid every cent back to Walt that she ever owed him out of what her son was sending her from the Army.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's a story, you wouldn't find many people doing that. She said, don't give my husband credit because he's not paying a nickel of it, she said. But my son is giving me the money. And of course, we had a lot of people that had tough going, you know, but we managed. Things weren't expensive like they are now.
Right.
We got 11 cents for a loaf of bread. And you just, well, you managed to get along because you lived on whatever you made those days.
Right.
You didn't go out buying something you didn't need
Didn't
and
go out
couldn't
on
afford.
credit. Yeah.
No. And there were a lot of people out of work. A lot of people out of work. But people seem to come through. They seem to come through. Some of them found it very hard.
How'd you manage the hurricane in 1938?
Well, we didn't have too much
No, didn't
damage
have-
here,
no.
but we had some relatives in Milford that the trees went down and almost hit their house, and Walter and Gunner went over there and helped them get
Straighten up. Yeah.
back to order again. But we didn't seem to have too much right here. It didn't hit us real bad. Not like it did some, you know. Some people crashed their houses and everything. But
That was the year that it took one of our maple trees out in front, and it took the two apple trees, so that I was just 10 years old, and they took both the apple trees, and it took the whole beautiful, one of the most beautiful arbors I have ever seen anybody have, and that took all our arbor. And we children were at Eli Whitney's school, and there was only one who could go in the car and then just try to drop us, because where the trees were coming down, fires in those days. But they, for the most part, tried to get us home that way from school. I remember staying late at school, getting later as children, but they didn't.
That latest storm we had, Wilcoxon has lined with these old maple trees. We'd lost two before that, but we were looking out, the front wind was going.
And they all were heading the right direction, so they were going down, but they weren't coming right at his house. So we were
Yeah, and as
glad
you
about that.
traveled through Stratford, you could see that...
All the same direction, huh?
Yeah, it was all the same direction, so that the north and south houses were in more danger. The street that was going north and south,
did you turn that on, Miller?
yeah, I think so. It says, oh, wait a minute, yeah, I've got it on. What's the red light about? Something seems strange. It is running, and I've got record on, so I think the red light means
Means it's on.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I hope we got it, because that's it was coming at me too fast to take any notes.
Yeah, you can't remember everything. Well, some of it's just interesting maybe to you,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
to nothing for what you need.
well.
I don't know whether
I won't be writing on this particular phase. I'm doing it for Lou,
they're...
and he'll use what he can. And
Yeah.
wants to use.
Well, there's plenty you can tell, but you don't know what they really want.
No, that's right.
It's interesting, I think, some of the changes, because now Mary Fairchild, do you remember Mary?
Next door.
No,
But she-
I'm talking
she
about
lived-
where the post office was.
Oh.
She was 92 years old,
Mm.
and she had 6 slips on, and she sat 1 to 2 rows in front of me in the church group there. And the thing is, I'd watch her in the offering, and if she, and, you know, she pulled up 1 or 2, and then she had a pocket in about the second or third slip down, and then she'd get out a little money or something, and for her to put it in the offering plate, put a shit down like that.
She directed the music in the Sunday school till she almost dropped dead, you know, she
And
was
she had a
so
women's
old.
class. She was 92 years old, and she still was teaching that women's Bible class.
Of course, she was
Good.
she was Mrs. Elliott Peck's aunt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a sister to Mrs. Elliott Peck's father.
Yeah.
They lived, of course, they
And
tore the house down.
She gave my brother Bill piano lessons.
I took
Right.
lessons from her too. Yeah, we all took lessons. Alice and Helen took lessons from her too. She taught music. She always had a pencil that the top rattled. It had a hook or something on it, and she'd write, and that thing would rattle as she wrote. Funny.
But I was thinking that would make a change, you see, with some of those old homes. If we could only flash back to see, you know, here are all these businesses
Oh, down
Oh, yeah.
here
taking
too.
up our main street.
Oh, sure.
And then, of course, even over here.
Well, down here, where they put Barnum Avenue through. That, of course, never was there before. You came through what is Essex Place today. And then you had to, the trolley car went to Stratford Center and out East Broadway. It didn't go, there was no Barnum Avenue.
Well,
years
after
ago.
the Barnum Avenue was in, there was a house where, what is it, where the gas station is now?
What?
There was a home at the intersection of Main and Barnum when I first came here.
Oh, there was a row.
Yeah.
Dr. Howland owned one of them there. In fact, Mrs. Louis Peck, if you remember her, Ruth Peck's mother, they were in our church. Their house was there, and there was, the Snyders had two beautiful homes there. And then down at the corner was Mr. Mallet owned the corner house on Essex Place, and across the street where the town hall is was Mrs. Eva Jewell's uncle owned all that land where the green is there, and the big white house, and then on Essex Place, what it was Barnum Avenue those days, was a store even there.
Of course, the firehouse wasn't where it is now.
Oh no, it was in Stratford Center, the firehouse, years ago.
The house that I'm trying to recall, and I think it's where the fillings, south of Barnum corner, burned down, and there was a Sikorsky man that lived there, and he got all the family out over the porch roof.
Near Barnum Avenue?
That's the way I remember it now. I could be wrong. And he made the mistake of going back in for something, and he got burned up at the house. The family.
I don't know. Of course, the houses this way, I remember they tore down to build the town hall there. They tore down, but some of the other ones on Main Street, they moved up onto King Street, I believe. There was 2, 3 of them. They moved the houses up there. And I think Mrs. Louis Peck's house was moved up there. And I think there was another one that was moved up there. In fact, I think Grace Anderson lives in one of the houses that was moved, but I'm not positive. But I think she does live in one of them that was moved. And of course, they cut through the street. There wasn't only a little street there then, but they made it.
Down at the corner of Barnum Avenue?
Huh?
Remember the little diner down here?
Oh, yeah, on what is Barnum Avenue today. Yeah, Fagan's Diner. Yeah, and of course,
Is that any relation to the other Fagans?
yes, the father. Father.
Yeah.
And also Judy Lynn. That's where I first met her, was at that diner. Judy Lynn came down from New Hampshire or somewhere, I think it was New Hampshire. She had 3 children, and she couldn't do anything with her husband. She tried, he drank, she couldn't do anything with him, and finally she left him, and her children, some minister took her children and took care of them, and she worked in the diner here for Mr. Fagan. And that's where Walt and I first met her. And then Mr. Fagan was a friend of Axel Lynn's. And he introduced Judy to Axel Lynn, and that's how they eventually got married. And of course Barbara was, Axel was married before, but his wife died and they had no children. And so when she married Judy, they had Barbara. Of course Barbara died, what was it, a year or 2 ago. Barbara, her girl by Axel, died, but she still has Ronnie. He lives over, he runs the business today, I think Ronnie does, Axel's business. And then there's George, who's out in Ohio, I think somewhere out there. And then Violet, her daughter by the first husband, lives in Milford. And now Judy has gone, since Barbara died, she's gone to live over, as I understand it, they've added on the house or something at Violet's, and she's gone over there to live. Yeah, very lovely person, Judy, but she had it a little hard in the beginning, you know.
Well, I've enjoyed this immensely, and glad to see how bright and clear you are in your thinking and
But I wish,
remembering. And
of course, the Malloys lived next door.
yes.
Yeah, and the Thompsons used to live down where Del Vecchio lives today. And Mrs. Merrill, she was an old-time Stratford person, I'm telling you. She was related to Mrs. A.W. Burritt. They were sisters. And she was, her husband, I remember him, he worked for Locomobile, which ended up Carpenter Steel, you know, or whatever you call it. And he used to go up and down Main Street with the loco testing, flat, like testing out the motors for the Locomobile. He committed suicide, her husband did. And her sister, I forget now her name now, somebody murdered her. Mrs. Merrill had every tragedy in her family. She was a lovely person, but she had every tragedy in her family that anybody could ever have, it seemed, you know. Terrible tragedies, and you'd wonder, she was the loveliest person and never found fault or complained about a thing. Yeah, really quite something. She lived, the Porters lived the corner house on Curtis Place, and Mrs. Merrill lived the next house, the last part of her life. In the beginning, she lived at the foot of North Avenue on Main Street, down there next to right where the light is at North Avenue. But all the, I guess there's a lot of things I could probably tell you if I thought of them, you know, but probably nothing that would be of any interest in this, because people...
I have enjoyed it, and I want to thank you for letting me into your house.
Well, I'm glad.
I
I hope there's something of interest. If there's anything you want to know about, ask me, because I'd be glad to tell you anything. I can't think of everything, and for 80 years I don't remember. I'll be 88 in July, and I tell you what, my sister Helen, she's in the Milford Convalescent Home at Pond Point, but even though she's crippled and all, and she's a terrible griper, she finds fault with everything, but she remembers more things than I do, because you see, she's 3 years older than I am. But she'll remember a lot of things that I don't remember. And if I come to ask her something, she'll remember. But I wish there was something more to use. I don't think I know anything really to use in this.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, he's...
I just felt there wasn't too much that I knew. I didn't remember the Peck's Mill disaster, but I know Harvey Rugg, who lived on Hillside. He was in that disaster. His mother and father were killed, and he lived. Harvey Rugg lived. He grew up on Hillside Avenue, but he was a baby, and he lived. But that disaster, of course, was a year or two before me. I didn't know about, only what my folks tell me about it.
You mean about the streetcar and went into the...
What? The bridge broke down, let the trolley down. Yes. I knew the Wilkinson lady that got terribly burned there on the trolley going to Shelton. I knew her. She's died since too. But there's a lot of things that, if you ask me, there's a lot of things probably, but I just don't think of everything that would be interesting for this. I wish I could think of something more to be of interest. I don't know. Of course, we never had school busing. We had to walk to school in the snow up to your knees. And I tell you one thing, when it was going to be a bad day, the Stratford foghorn blew. When it was going to be such a day that they had to close the school. They didn't close them very often, but if they did, the foghorn blew, and that was an indication we didn't have school.
Well, working with Sikorsky for 32 years, in the more recent years, they have a year-long contract with D'Addario, I believe it is, to see that the parking lots are all cleared out whenever it snows. Very rarely did the Sikorsky plant shut down. But this one particular time, the snowstorm came right about, well,
Opening
just just a little bit before opening time, and we turned on the radio and said they weren't keeping that day. And so I had a leisurely breakfast and got out to plow myself out. And all of a sudden I got a call, and the fellow that connects with the Federal Aviation Authority, he was the liaison man for Sikorsky, Dumont, called me up and say, hey, you know that conference we were going to have with the FAA people from Washington, the guys are here. And they had hopped a plane from Washington to New York and picked up some more FAA people in the local office in New York, and they drove up, and here they were. The plant wasn't even open. But I had to scurry myself out and get up there for that meeting.
Oh, that's something, huh?
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, there's a lot of things, as you, now, you thought of that when I thought about the foghorn blowing.
Yeah.
But, there's probably a lot more things that would be of interest to this particular thing, if we could think of them.
Yeah, well, we'll see what comes out, okay?
Well, it's, I hope to be something that will be of interest anyway. Of course, it was a different world years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I always think about church today. They can't go to church, they can't go to Sunday school, they can't go to school because of this bad weather or something else, or they got a toe ache or something. But you know, my mother said, if you're so sick you can't go to Sunday school today, remember, you're sick all day.
Yeah.
You don't go out this afternoon either.
Right.
You know, we weren't ever sick unless we were sick.
Right.
Because you didn't want to stay in all day Sunday.
Right.
But I often think maybe if some of that was instilled in the children today, maybe it would be better too.
Yeah.
They get away with too much today. The parents seem to be afraid of the children, I think. I think they're afraid of them.
Well, you know, things go through a pendulum. You're saying that there's too much permissiveness today. And when it goes too far, well, it'll change, you know, towards
but the
getting more
trouble is
disciplined.
these children that are growing up under are going to be parents sooner or later, and it's not going to be good, you know, not to have. I'm grateful. We had to toe the mark. My mother didn't let us get away with anything. She told us not to go barefooted. Those days they were always afraid of lockjaw, and we were never allowed. That was one thing my parents were particular about, that we have good shoes and we keep them on. We could not take them off and go barefooted. Well, of course, all the neighborhood kids, most of them went barefooted because it saved buying shoes in the summertime when they were on vacation. So we get them all out under our kitchen window where we think my mother can't see us because the window's up high, and we take our shoes off on the grass there. And my mother, because we were all quiet and weren't making any noise, she came out to see what was going on because she didn't hear any children making any noise. When she caught us without our shoes, we got a licking. Believe me. My mother's hand was pretty sturdy. She didn't say, wait till your father comes home, he'll take care of you. Now I hear that's what they say now, wait till your father comes home, he'll take care of you. But I think that a good discipline makes better children. I don't say, I wouldn't be in favor of beating or anything like that, but I think you can take things away from children, privileges that they want very much, and I think that hurts a great deal too. You can do things, but
speaking about going barefoot, I guess we weren't scared of lockjaw in Korea, but growing up in Korea, we had to wait for the first strawberry to ripen before you were allowed to go barefoot.
Oh, really? Because it's warm there.
Yes,
you know.
right.
But I guess, you see, my mother was a farm girl. She grew up on a farm. Where Helen is in the home there was my grandfather's farm. They of course was sold, but I think they were more apt to have glass and things around on the farm maybe than they would in a city or so forth. But I know she was always worried about getting things in your feet, nails and different things, you know. So I guess that was the reason. But
Now, I have a story to tell on, as far as growing up in Korea is concerned, a story to tell on my older sister, who was 3 years my senior. But she wanted to go around in her birthday suit like the natives did, you know.
Oh.
And it was kind of cold. Well, she finally, I guess, mother got tired of denying her, and she went out and she did find out it was cold, and she came shivering back in.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
When did you come to the United States?
1926. I was 14 years old.
you were 14 when you came?
Now, did your parents still go back to Korea?
No, they weren't able to because there was a shortage in funds. There was a depression in the mission giving, shall we say, before. Right after the war in 1909, the Methodist Church put on a big celebration kind of a thing out in Columbus, Ohio, and raised a lot of money for missions and went gung-ho. And then it sort of gradually, subsided, so they weren't able to go back. As a result, I had my 4 years in high school in 4 different places.
Oh.
First year was out in Korea, and next place was from a small little boarding school out there. I was plunked down in Cambridge High in Latin with 4,000 students, which was quite a shocking change for me at the time. But there, I did have one pal that I was inseparable with. We used to make crystal set radios and hop trucks and go out to a sand pit for a swim and different things. And had an interesting follow-up on that. When I went back for my master's degree at MIT, I had some kind of a little cold or something, went to the infirmary or the nursery, infirmary I guess you'd call it, and here this name appeared that I used to be a pal with. My sophomore year chum. And he was the son of a Harvard professor, and I made contact then with him. And he invited me out for supper and an evening at his home. And that was all there was to it, actually. I mean, we had our own things that we were doing, and so forth. Never
were you the youngest in the family?
No, I was second oldest.
Oh, you were second oldest?
Yeah.
All your sisters were younger, huh?
Two younger and one older.
No, I thought you had 4. You had 3 sisters.
3 sisters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of them died, didn't they?
Yes, my next to me, younger one.
Oh. You got a niece or something in Kenya, have you?
Yes, indeed. She's the daughter of my next younger sister, and just recently we were able to go over and visit her. The World Methodist Council was meeting in Kenya, so we persuaded her father, who now has a new wife, to meet his own daughter and ourselves over at that conference. And so we went. And
well,
she's thoroughly Kenyanized. That is, she is a citizen of Kenya today.
Oh.
And she did have quite some distance and a little hard to get to. Had a very lovely little summer home, but she finally sold that, and she was in the process of building a new house on the edge, on the outside edge, or the last bus stop out from Kenya.
She likes it there.
She's thoroughly established, there's no question. I mean,
Janet said Zaire would be a lovely place to live if it wasn't for this army business and everything.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the leader takes everything away from them. She said she tried to tell
a lot of corruption
about it, but a lot of people don't believe it. When the leader has a birthday, these people don't get any wages to speak of, get very little wages, but they have to give a day's pay to that leader when it's his birthday and holiday. And she said, it's terrible when you think about it, to think that, they really don't know what it is to have any life, really. She had Rosie work for her for a long time, but Rosie knew a little about it. She'd been to America sometime or other. She knew about it. And she worked for Janet, and when Janet left, she stayed there for 2 years with Tom to take care of his needs until his contract was up. And then she had a boy for quite a long time towards the end, she taught him not to take him because she always gave to them. If they she had food and things, she would give. If they even asked, she'd give it to them. And she tried to teach him, but after 2 years, he stole from her, and she was quite upset about that because she thought really she had trained him to be. Through giving to him, that she trained him. She said to him, "Why didn't you ask for it? Why did you take it?" But I guess it's hard when they don't have anything, you know, to not, if they see it, not to take it. But she said that of course, you didn't see the piece that was in the Granger, that Janet wrote a Christmas letter, a very lovely Christmas letter. Tom is now in Indonesia.
Oh.
And he loves it. And of course, Janet said she would have loved to go on, but she couldn't because Tommy's graduating from high school this year. He's starting college, and Danny entered high school. She had to be home with the boys. But she said he's in part of Java, and she wrote all about it. And Tom said that the people there are the nicest people that you'd ever want to know, and they're so lovely, and they bring their children up to be real lovely people. And she said the country itself is beautiful. They have loads and loads of orchids there. They're so plentiful. And he said that really Indonesia was one of the nicest countries he'd ever been. But she said Zaire, it rains mostly at night there, but she said that the most beautiful blue sky in Zaire, and it would be a lovely place to live if it wasn't for the army. That's why she had to come home. She drove the mothers took turns driving the school buses, and she had to take her turn driving school bus, and they had to be in school at 7 o'clock, and the army got so it was following the school buses, and she was afraid of the lives of her children. And so she went to Kinshasa and asked the council to fly her home. And so that's how she happened to come home before Tom did, because she was afraid to stay anymore. But I don't know. It's awful when you think of those people not even getting enough to live on, you might say.
Right.
These leaders, I don't know what could ever be done with them. They have control some way. And Liberia was the same way when she was in Liberia. She had an air conditioner in the window, and the air conditioner stopped, and afterwards there was a snake in the air conditioner. A rattlesnake. Good thing she didn't put her hands in there to find out what was the matter. But Liberia, she taught in Liberia in the international school there. Now she's teaching in Arizona. She got her. When she went there, she didn't have enough credits from Connecticut that they needed. So she took courses, and about 3 years ago, she got
certified,
got accomplished, and she applied. They wanted, I think it was 300 people or something like that, and they could only use a few, and she was one of the few they chose for the job. And so she took it, and it was with the hard to learn children.
Handicapped?
Well, not really handicapped. Slow learning children, and she loved it. But last year, not this last year, but the year before, they offered her a job in the regular school, and she didn't want to take it because she wanted to. She liked what she was doing so well that she didn't want to leave it, and but she got to thinking it was government run, the slow learning, and if they decided to give it up, that she wouldn't maybe get a job in the regular school. So she finally took it, and she's teaching kindergarten and loves it. And when she was in Candor, she taught kindergarten, and she said she liked kindergarten because when the children came to school, the only bad they knew was what their parents had taught them. In other words, when they're in kindergarten and nursery, they're really nice children because they don't know any better. But she likes it. She's enjoying it, but she would have liked to stay. But she said that she felt that she was accomplishing something with the
Mm.
hard-to-learn children or slow-learning children. But she's enjoying it.
Mhm.
Temperature's awful hot there, but they
Yeah.
love it.
Mhm.
That's how she happened to go out there.
Mhm.
See, after living in Zaire and all so long, why, she was used to the heat.
Mm.
Here she was cold even in the summertime.
Yeah.
So, well, Miller,
Yeah,
I
thank
kept
you very
a long
much.